Okay, my friends, this sort of took a turn. I was going to be going into the bacteria database. We're trying to create one in Northern Ireland. There's fabulous research going on over there. But it all started out with my research on fascia years ago. And as I started going through this, setting up with the procedures and stuff, what we have to do and how we're going to collect the specimens and analysis and all that, I realized how this all started back in, I don't know, 2010 or so. I was researching the fascia, and then I remembered all of the downside to this thing where my research really just got destroyed and then it just got taken over. And I'm going to explain that because I don't think it was right. Okay, my friends, here's my grievance. I wrote the book Mudfossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision because I could not get Yale or anybody to pay attention. And Yale's right down the street from me. I presented all my work to them, the CAT scans, the DNA and everything, and they said I must be doing everything wrong, and they just refused to even discuss anything with me. And then they wrote a paper that really was my paper. They were almost word for word. It's all about the same things that I alleged, only they had it all wrong, and they tried to twist it in their favor by saying it was only soft-bodied creatures. No, there was anything. Bones turned to stone, primarily mud fossils. That's what I named it, mud fossils. And I wrote the book about it, Mud Fossils, and this goes back to early in 2016. It was published in February. They wrote their paper the end of 2016, and then touting that they had discovered all this and how this happened and everything, and it was just some quirk of nature, and it was entirely a worldwide flood. The world was covered by oceans, and I can show so much about this. The Triassic period was this period, and it was not 540 million years ago. It was very recent. All my mud fossils that I have here were on the surface of the earth. They were not buried. So there's nothing, and all of the ancient texts, and Velikovsky specifically, this is the guy, you read what he has to say, and he talks about the worldwide catastrophes that occurred and were recorded around the world. There were survivors, and they were up in the mountains and the hills and the caves and so forth, because we were almost impacted by Venus, and it was an absolute disaster, and it reset civilization. And even Yale agrees with this. They said all of these creatures died at this time, and it might have been a failed evolutionary experiment, which it was. And it's, you know, they should be held accountable for this, for taking my research and virtually rewriting it when they would not even communicate with me after me presenting all this research to them. That's just not right. It really isn't right. Okay, so we know that I wrote this book in frustration, called Minds in Collision. Their minds could not accept the reality, and it was published in February 2016. And here is Yale, here's my paper I put out in 2015, and this is virtually exactly what Yale says. I say the fascia separates every cell and structure from its neighbor in life and death. Fascia protects every bit of you from invasion, including a complete fabric bag that is your skin. Your skin is not just one fabric either. There's tough skin and there's fine skin. All fascia is made of collagens and keragens, which are made out of phospholipids, which converted down to Feldspar. And I laid all this out to them. All right, but these are the fabrics. It's like a fabric creating fibers and elastins in a sheet that wraps everything individually and then comes together as one giant system. This was also acknowledged by academia, that there is one giant system, and it's called interstitium now. And this was from my work on fascia, because that's your fascia. It all ties together into this one giant system. And I said there's over 20 types of collagens, each keratin. Some protect from acids, others caustic, others mineralize in strength, and the variety is amazing. These fibers are infused with silicon. Skin has 50 times the silicon. 50 times, remember this. This is all in Yale's paper as well. You see, this is just a fact. I'm not bragging, but it just happened. Meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. This is 2018. I just talked to you about the interstitium, which is one giant system. And they say that that's exactly what they found. This fluid-filled highway is all related together with every other part of your interstitium, which is all your membranes. They all tie together, and they are a fluid-filled highway. With all this known about human anatomy, you wouldn't expect doctors to discover a new body part in this day and age, but now researchers say they've done just exactly that. They found a network of fluid-filled spaces in tissues that hadn't been seen before. I could see them in my Mudfossils, and I got a hold of a guy in 2009, 2010, right around there, and I asked him about this, and he was an autopsy guy, and he said, "Oh no, that's nothing." And I said, "No, there's something going on here. I can see it in my Mudfossils. I could see these structures just like this." And they would, by the time they saw him, it was flat because they would to do the autopsies. Anyway, he looked at it, and he worked with me for a couple of years, and I worked with some other fascia guys around the world, and then in here in 2018. They say, yes, this is a newfound organ, and I was discussing that in 2015 in my paper. And here's Yale's paper from 2016, the end of 2016, mine was early 2016. Exceptional preservation, soft-bodied Edicarta biota promoted by silica-rich oceans. Silica, which is a silicon, I said it's 50 times more. It's oceans, the oceans covered the world, and there's exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures, yes. But they have it all wrong still. They have it totally wrong still. But they tried to pick and choose the stuff out of my paper and use it. And they did. They said it could have happened within hours or days. I told them it could have happened overnight. I don't think it was that fast, but it was pretty fast. And I think I now have focused in on what might have been a really important part that I didn't pay close attention to before, which is the enzymes. The enzymes that would have been boiled out of all of these parts of the body trying to react to these invasions and heat and everything else. Because the enzymes are very, very reactive. Anyway, I was doing all this long before them, and then they took credit for my work. All right, and here it is right here. This is Yale News. We discovered all this stuff. This is October 2016. So again, I was 5-6 years into this. I had DNA tests, I had CAT scans, all presented to them, and they dismissed them all, and now they put this paper out a year later saying Earth's earliest community of complex sea creatures lived in a warm, slimy planetary dish. Yet we likely wouldn't even know about it at all if not for a quirk in the chemistry of ancient oceans. It's because of the silicon, and that's because of the boiled off creatures. Look at this, a Yale-led research team. No, I did the research. They just took my work and printed it. Found Edicarta biota, which is nothing more than creatures, a collection of marine fossils found in sandstone, no, they're in mud, around the world, record the operation of an unusual mechanism, preserved impressions of the creature's soft bodies, not impressions, the creatures were preserved themselves, and they still have blood coming out of them. And impressions of the creature's soft bodies for hundreds of millions of years. No, it wasn't. It was just not too long ago at all. These findings appear in the journal Geology. Now, if Geology had done their job, they would have known that I already wrote this paper. Edicarta biota takes the name from a fossil deposit in South Australia, but fossils of the Edicarta biota are found worldwide. It's everywhere in the whole world, on the same layer, in rocks ranging at this age, which they claim is the Triassic, 540 to 580 million years ago. That is not true. It's not true at all. Everything I have was on the surface of the Earth, and everything I have has been completely validated, and it was in the Great Flood. And it was a product of nucleophilic substitution. And it happened in hot, salty, silica-rich waters. Now listen to this now, so don't forget. They're saying it's worldwide, everywhere in the world. And it's only in the ocean. So the ocean was one big worldwide ocean at that time. It was because of the Great Flood. And they say it's ranging from this time, which is not correct. The creatures themselves, listen to this, were as small as a few millimeters, tiny little things, and as large as 1 meter. No, they were just absolutely stunningly large. They lived in dense diverse communities on the seafloor. And this is worldwide, so must have been one gigantic sea. But it was from the flood. Now listen to this. Many of them are outright bizarre in appearance and do not resemble any organism alive today. That's correct. A lot of them were drowned and they never came back. This is Lydia Tarhan. She's the lead author. We would like to understand their relationship to the complex animals that evolved shortly thereafter. They say like everything was wiped off the face of the earth, basically. Now, are these Arctic organisms some sort of failed evolutionary experiment? Yes, they were. All right? Or do they include the ancestors of animals subsequently colonized the oceans? They're related. A big part of the answer involves figuring out how these fossils are able to form. I explained exactly how they form. There's no question whatsoever how they form. The animals themselves were entirely soft-bodied. That is totally incorrect. They had all the bones, they had everything. They were nucleophilically invaded. So they took on a new characteristic. They think they must have been soft because they turned into stone, like that. All right, or like my goose. All right, that's a goose. This is feathers. What happened was this was a worldwide flood, and they're all flat on one side, laying like that. And this thing lifted up and snapped off his neck. That's where his neck is, right there. And it all turns to a different material inside because it's nucleophilically invaded. This right here, hold on. All right, here's the process. This was a hot saltwater flood, and it boiled all the creatures' bodies, and their bodies turned into mud, literally mud, the flesh. And then the fascia, which is what I was studying, protected the contents of each one of these body parts. This is a lung. You see how flat that is? This is the pleura, the coating of a lung. That's the investment at the bottom of a lung. That's the investment at the top. It held in position. This has been DNA tested, CAT scanned. It's 100% for certain. It's a human mitochondrial DNA, which is the mother's side. It died like that, flat as a pancake. This one here is another lung. This was not DNA tested or CAT scanned, but you can see it's a lung. And this is the pleura. You see how dense that pleura is? That's the rubber bag. Does that all day long, or you're dead. And there's this flap on this one that locks it into the body, and a tab at the top. All right, and this, again, flat as a pancake. All my stuff is basically flat. And this is all on top of the surface of the earth. I didn't dig for this stuff. It's just laying around. And this is the Triassic era, the area. I am right near Yale. And this is all Triassic rock, and this is where the dinosaur footprints are, supposedly from the Triassic going into the Jurassic, that type of thing. No, it was just not long ago. Read Velikovsky and you'll understand. This is a bone. This was not a piece of rubber, soft tissue. That was a bone, and they get invaded. It's called nucleophilic substitution. It's a very simple process, but it requires certain chemistry. And that chemistry was in this hot saltwater flood with the silicon, the salts, and I'm sure there was a ton of enzymes. Enzymes are very, very reactive molecules, and they don't get used up. They just keep doing their job until they're done, and then they go away. Enzymes are just absolutely amazing things. Now, I have so much evidence about this stuff, there's just no way to deny it. And they come in all variations. This is another lung. This one just evacuated all the stuff. You can still see the red blood in there. And some of them, the blood leaks right out. I have ones that blood leaked right out of them. It preserves very well if they were impacted in wet mud. And a certain, you know, eventually they eroded away. The mud ran away after rain and so forth, and you ended up with it just laying on the top of the soils. They are not buried deep. So This is what you got, and Yale's trying to take credit for that. So, and they're saying right here, the animals are entirely soft-bodied. No, they weren't. If they lived before evolution of shells, teeth, bones, or anything. No, that's not true whatsoever. That's totally wrong. And they say, oh, those are typically the only parts of an organism to become fossilized. That's right, because they were out and exposed, and you drop dead, and the animals eat you, insects and all that. You rot away, your carcass. The bones are more mineralized. But in an ocean, in a hot water flood, in these conditions, no. The flesh boils off, and these right here, this is the key, the fascia. It went from a phospholipid, which is the P right here, phospho, down to aluminum silicates. It boiled down to that, and that created feldspar, and that is basically inert. That stuff there, it's just like a rubber bag. And that's what all your membranes are made out of phospholipids, and they protect you and keep stuff out and let stuff in. They have very, very fascia, absolutely amazing, and it's membranes basically. Fascia and membranes to me are basically the same thing. You know, the fascia just does your whole system. See this? Listen to this. What researchers realized, they said, was the oceans during this time of edible water much richer in dissolved silica. Yeah, that's because the skin is 50 times more silicon, and it boiled away. It says it enabled the transformation of the loose sand, no, it was mud, around the animals to form into rock to occur over a matter of hours or years. You ever hear that before? No. They could cover this whole thing up so that they could keep on spewing all their nonsense. All right? They say it could have happened in hours or years. Well, I told them that it could have happened overnight. So they covered their bases, but they just took my work and reprinted it. See, not normally it would take thousands to millions of years for them to turn into these things. It says Ediacara organs rapidly buried by sand during underwater storm events. No, it wasn't. It was all one layer through the whole world, and it was just covered by the great ocean flood. This supports the Bible, everything that they hate. Everything they hate, it supports. And it shows that they are incompetent. And now, as far as I'm concerned, that's plagiarism. What I'm seeing here, if you see it as not plagiarism, I don't know how you read it. All right, it says, this is the lead author. She says this happened under underwater storm events. How do they know? How would they come up with that? Underwater storm events? The process of cementing the sand grains around them must have happened rapidly. No, it's the mud, and it did happen rapidly because Venus almost hit Earth. Read Velikovsky, he did the work. Otherwise, by the time carcasses rotted away, the sand bearing them would have simply collapsed into the hollow left behind erstwhile carcass. No, erstwhile mud fossil. He's talking about sand. They try to convolute it just a little bit so they could make it sound. And this is the guy I presented all my stuff to. Well, I presented to everybody down there, even to the president and everybody. I said, you guys, you're not doing your job. And I sent it to all of them, trust me. And it got very, very nasty. All right. They said the team conducted its research using detailed microscope-based techniques. No, I did all that stuff long before that. Their measurement was elementary composite cements on a micron scale. That's ridiculous. Sand is microns, and so is mud. Now, here's what they're looking for: grants. Clark Fund, NASA grant, NASA fellowship. That's what it's all about now, is money. I presented this long before they took credit for it. All right, and if you can see it in any other way, I'd like to have you explain to me how they mimicked virtually every word I said and why they refused to discuss it with me. And my paper was long before them, up on academia.edu. I had everything documented. There it is, skin 50 times more silicon. The fascia, one giant system.